In November last year, a ship called the BYD Shenzhen slipped out of a Chinese port carrying 1,768 electric vehicles, dodging storms across the Pacific, racing a deadline. On January 1st, Mexico's new tariffs on Chinese imports would kick in. Every car still at sea after that date would cost millions in duties. The ship made it, 11 days to spare. Here's the part that actually matters. Nobody at BYD called a shipping company to beg for space. They didn't need to. They owned the ship. 5 years ago, that sentence wouldn't have made sense. For 100 years, car companies built cars and paid someone else to move them across oceans. Toyota didn't own ships. Volkswagen didn't own ships. Not one major automaker on Earth owns so much as a rowboat. That job belonged to a handful of specialist shipping companies most people have never heard of. Names like NYK, Wallenius Wilhelmsen, Heg, running a quiet, century-old system nobody had any reason to question. Then, in under 2 years, BYD built a private fleet of 8 ocean-going ships from scratch and gave itself the power to move over 1 million vehicles a year without asking anyone for permission. So what actually broke the old system? 2 words: China and 2008. Go back to the financial crisis. Car sales collapsed overnight. Shipping companies got stuck with expensive vessels and nothing to carry. An entire generation of executives learned one lesson: never build a car carrier speculatively. For over a decade, almost nobody ordered new ones. Old ships aged out. Nobody replaced them. Nobody noticed because demand stayed flat, too. Then 2 things collided. Post-pandemic consumers went on a global car buying spree, and China's export numbers went vertical. 700,000 vehicles exported in 2019, nearly 5 million by 2023, the year China passed Japan as the world's biggest car exporter. Over 7 million by 2025. A shrinking fleet meets an exploding export curve. You don't need an economist to know what happens next. Charter rates that cost $17,000 a day before the pandemic hit, $115,000 a day by late 2023. Renting one ship for a month, $4.5 million. And the worst problem wasn't even the money, it was control. If a rival locked a ship into a 3-year contract, that capacity was just gone. Didn't matter how many cars you had ready at the factory gate. No boat, no shipment. That's the moment BYD stopped thinking of this as a shipping problem and started building a private fleet. January 2024, the first ship, BYD Explorer No. 1, sails for Europe with 5,000 vehicles aboard. By April 2025, the BYD Shenzhen enters service carrying 9,200 vehicles across 16 decks. Briefly, the largest car carrier ever built on Earth. 8 ships, 20 months, starting from zero. How does a car company build a private navy that fast? Because the shipyards weren't the bottleneck, they were down the coast. China builds more than half of the world's new ship tonnage. 6 of the 10 biggest shipbuilders on the planet are Chinese. BYD wasn't waiting in line, it was placing local orders. And the payoff is real. BYD says owning the fleet cuts shipping costs by 30 to 40%, potentially over $1 billion a year in savings. But the real prize isn't the discount. A chartered ship is a favor someone else can take back. An owned ship is just a fact, which is exactly what let the Shenzhen sail through a storm and beat a tariff deadline without a single phone call. There's a catch, though, and it's the one flaw BYD hasn't solved. Every voyage has 2 halves, and only one makes money. Ships leave China packed with 9,000 cars. They come home mostly empty because Europe doesn't send 9,000 cars back to China. An empty ship still burns nearly the same fuel, still pays the same crew, the same port fees. That return leg is close to pure loss. Traditional shipping companies solved this decades ago by never depending on one direction. Japanese cars one way, European machinery back. BYD hasn't solved it yet, which might be why the company quietly built a logistics subsidiary and started selling deck space to other manufacturers, including its own competitors, your fiercest rival becoming your tenant on the trip home. And BYD isn't alone anymore. Chery, Geely, SAIC, all moving into shipping. Chinese companies now have 47 new car carriers on order, a quarter of everything being built globally. Some analysts think China's controlled fleet could jump from under 3% of global capacity today to nearly 9% within a few years, putting the country on track for the world's fourth largest car carrier fleet by 2028. This isn't one company's gamble anymore. It's an entire industry deciding it would rather own the boats than keep asking permission to use someone else's. Nobody covered this properly while it was happening because nothing broke, and that's exactly the pattern with global shipping. It only makes headlines when something goes wrong. This time, over 20 months, absolutely everything went right, which is precisely why nobody was watching. So here's the real question. A car company building its own private ocean fleet. Is that the smartest industrial move of the decade? Or a 25-year bet that hasn't caught up with reality yet?